Hello, everyone, and welcome to Unfound Live for what is today? December 2nd. Of course, it's December 2nd. It's my nephew Johnny's birthday today. Charlie, did you know that? I'm sure you did. My nephew John turns 39 today. And I texted him and told him, one more year, man, one more year. And he'll be the big 4-0. So, nephew John, and if you're wondering, that is my brother Brian's son. That's the brother that lives near me here. And my brother Brian has two children. He has a daughter named Ashley, who will be turning 40. Let me think about it. She'll be turning 41 in February. And then John turns 39 today. In other birthday news, my dad turned 88 yesterday. Big 88. Hard to believe. He is now, if any of you are Steeler fans out there, he is Lynn Swan now, 88 years old. Of course, I did talk to him yesterday. I talked to him today. He is doing fantastically. So there you go. As I go through the show tonight, I hope you will consider giving it a thumbs up, as I always ask. If you are not yet a subscriber to this YouTube channel, please consider subscribing and spread the word around that this YouTube channel exists. There's a ton of videos on here. You can take up a lot of your time in, let's say, 2025, going through all the videos between the episodes and the map videos and the live shows and the Unfound nows and everything. There is a lot to partake in for this on this channel. Has to be one of the biggest, as far as number of videos and everything for disappearances on YouTube. Has to be. I know my buddy John Lorden does a nice job over there, but I think you know what I'm saying about this. So consider spreading the word around. And that's really about it for the marketing. Once again, just give a thumbs up. You know what to do. It's going to be an interesting show tonight. Of course, there was no show last week, and I think all of you deserve an explanation. However, I'm not going to get into all the nitty-gritty details of what has gone on over the past week. Would be here for 2 hours, and I don't want to do that, and I really don't want to relive it myself. But I will give you the generalities. And I know some of, most people who watch this live show are pretty zealous Unfound followers. Then you know that I've already said that I'm going to put the podcast on a hiatus for a little bit. No new disappearances featured after this Friday, of course, for the rest of the year. And we'll see how far that goes into 2025. And I'm going to give you at least a general explanation for that in a bit. But the reason there was no show last week is because about the time that the show was supposed to go off last week, it goes off at 9 p.m. Eastern here in the United States, I was actually over at my brother's going to bed. Last Monday was personally for me one of the worst days in recent memory. I'm not going to necessarily say in my life necessarily, but Monday was not a good day. And it culminated in me sleeping over at my brother's, and it's gotten better since. I'm going to tell you today, this Monday was about 1 million times, and even this Monday today was not the greatest. This Monday was like 1 million times better than last Monday. And if I can keep doing that, then things are going to be just fine. So what has generally happened is that I've suddenly developed a problem with sleeping. And I know that's really funny because I think just the last live show I did 2 weeks ago, I was talking about how I can sleep anywhere. But I think this has been developing for a while. That I've developed some bad sleep habits. I think that that's for anybody who works from home, and you don't have to necessarily get up. Your fingers a little up here and there. Anybody watching, little quote unquote people who don't have to get up every day, let's say, and take a shower and get out of their pajamas and things. It's very easy to, I think, over time develop bad sleep habits. And what do I mean by bad sleep habits? Doing work in bed, going to bed before you're actually tired, in the morning, staying in the bed even though you're wide awake. You stay in bed anyway, watching TV, looking at your phone. You have your laptop right there doing work and everything. That over time has crept into my behavior here at home. And what happens, as I've learned since then, I've taken all me, I like, I'm an investigator. I'm a reporter, but I'm also an investigator. And I want to seek out, what's going on. And I've educated myself so much since last Monday that what ends up happening mentally is that at some point your body starts disconnecting the bed from sleep. It's very psychological. It's people maybe who have a fear of dogs. Just because they get bit by one dog does not mean all dogs are bad, but all it takes is one dog for a child who really doesn't understand that everything to be afraid of all dogs. It's kind of like that. It's a very psychological thing. And what had happened was that I think that my sleep habits were getting worse and worse and worse. And they culminated with that previous weekend, me not getting a lot of sleep and me being very freaked out about it. Now, once again, a week makes all the difference. Had this happened, if I was educated and this had happened back then, I would have said, yep, that's the problem. But that was not me over a week ago. I was clueless on these things, but I understand this stuff now. So because of that, I've developed kind of a bad sleep habits. And you should know, even though since last Monday, that Monday night, I got 8 hours of sleep. But on Tuesday night, I got no sleep. On Wednesday night, I got 8 hours of sleep. So the night before Thanksgiving. Thursday night, I got about 4 hours of sleep. On Friday night, after I did the interview with Jason Blair, which was spectacular. I can't wait for all of you to hear it. After that, I got 8 hours of sleep. I slept on the couch right over there. But then on Saturday night and Sunday night, I've gotten about 4 hours of sleep. And so and the sleep is, I want to say in a word, I'm really fighting for it, let's say. And this is from a guy who, like I said, and I stand by this, that no problem for me usually to sleep 8-9 hours, no problem. But, maybe just taking that for granted. But when you're thinking like that, that's how the bad habits, I think can enter in. And so because of that, because my sleep seems to be up and down and all around. Now, you should know I am tired. I've been up since 7 this morning. I took a long walk on the beach this morning. It was really chilly here. But I got work done today. I got Unfound work done today. I got the oil changed in the car today. I'm out there and everything else. But because the sleep is unpredictable, because if you win one night, well, the next night's, coming. I just don't feel like I can give 100%. I don't want to start making promises about doing interviews and talking to people and everything else if I don't think that I'm going to be at my absolute best. And so that's why I've done this. Maybe I was due. I mean, I do have assistants and I love every one of them, but I am one of the very, very, very few podcasters out there in any genre that does all his own work. From the writing to the recording to the editing and doing all of that on my own and learning how to do all of that. I'm one of the few. And especially when it comes to popular podcasts that have 460 episodes and everything else, I'm one of the few. And so thinking about this, and it is Christmas time and everything else and going into the new year, I thought that maybe the universe was telling me something. And so when I say hiatus, what I mean is no new disappearance episodes. Now, there will be one this week, and I do have things planned out for the rest of December, but no new disappearances. I intend on doing the update episode. I'm hoping Dr. Telesco and I can get together again. I can interview her again. I have to talk to her about that. I am going to have I'm going to replay the first Q&A episode I ever did way back in like 2018 or something like that. Because I still to this day, get so many questions about me and everything. And a lot of that is in that one. And now that the podcast is way, way, way more popular, I'm hoping people will hear it. And then when January comes around, I will sort out where we are going to go from there. And in the meantime, I'm going to be working on getting back to some good sleep habits, getting some good sleep, making sure that the habits are solid, because getting no sleep is no fun. But what I've learned, and like I said, I've learned a lot over the past week, especially since Monday. Last Monday was just like, oh my gosh. I mean, my brother Brian and I, we've known each other since 1994, and we've been through a lot together. Of all of my siblings now, I've been around Brian the most. It used to be before I moved away from Pennsylvania, it's probably my sister Diane, and then secondary, my brother Michael, who lived in the Pittsburgh area. But once I moved to Las Vegas in the last 26 years, my brother Brian has seen me the most. And like I said, we've been through a lot together, a lot of good times, some bad times. And the truth is, when he came down here, when I called him and he came down here to get me on Monday afternoon, I freaked him out. And only Charlie can truly appreciate to be able to freak out Brian Joyce takes something. Let's just put it that way. Brian Joyce, as my brother Michael, both of them have seen a lot. And so when Brian Joyce says he is freaked out by something, it's freaky. But luckily, things got worked out, and since then I've been okay. Now you should also know something else. If you're thinking, well, Ed, if you're having some sleep issues, and that maybe you should do this, maybe you should do that. I resolved no drugs. No drugs. Zero. I will be honest, you do not know how close I came to taking an Ambien last Wednesday. Did not take it. In fact, because I did get some prescriptions for like sleeping pills at the beginning of last week. You know what I did with them? I threw them all out. So we're going to do this the old-fashioned way. We're going to earn it. And I put myself on a plan. And so that is what has been going on the past week. Now, somehow I managed to get out last Friday's episode. I really pat myself on the back for that one. And this Friday's episode's already done. I did the interview on Saturday and edited it on Saturday night. I've already written it. I've already recorded it. It's already done. So it will be coming out this Friday, no problem. And that also with it, though, will be kind of something like I'm saying here about it won't be in the actual. I'm not going to distract away from the disappearance. I'm not putting, what's going on in the same episode. That would be wrong. But there will be another upload that you will find on your feed on Friday where I will talk about the plans for the near future and what's going on, talking about my, where I see this all going. My dad knows what's going on. A little worried to start, maybe not as worried now. For him, what it means is I'm going to go up to see him for Christmas earlier than I planned. So I guess he's benefiting. And being that I've told him what's going on, he's even gotten me a new bed. He ordered a new bed for up there at his place because it's something I've been complaining about for years, where I have to sleep in that spare bedroom. That bed is horrible. So he actually went out and ordered a new bed today. I think it's going to be there next Monday. So that is what has been going on. I've lost a little weight because of it, but I can't say I'm that surprised. Actually, I was losing some weight, and before that, I have really changed up my eating habits the last couple of months. I've been getting back to the gym and everything, so I'm not too surprised by that. Otherwise I feel fine, except I'm tired. And what I was going to say is, back on Friday night when I did that spectacular interview with Jason Blair, and like I said, it'll be out soon. He didn't give me an actual date. But I was so tired on Friday night doing that interview. I haven't heard, he hasn't sent me a recording of it yet. I'm going to be very interested to know if I sound as tired as I was. I think I did. I think I said everything that I needed to say. Jason thought it was a spectacular interview, so he can be the judge. But man, was I tired. Oh my gosh, I was so tired on Friday evening. I was tired before we started. And we went for 2.5 hours straight talking. He's asking me about me, everything. These are the things that get covered when you're talking to Ed Densel. So that's what's been going on. And I'm trying to stay positive about all of this. Probably needed a break anyway. Like I said, maybe this is the universe kind of telling me something. We'll just have to see. And besides, I have enough work to do behind the scenes anyway on things that don't even have anything to do with episodes. It's going to give me an opportunity to redo the Unfound website. Julia Cowley has, I really like the website she has for the consult. So I'm going to have some opportunity to do that work on that. And as I've mentioned, there are 2 big projects that are kind of off the books right now. One regarding the disappearances of Angela Westbury and Teresa Hickman here in Florida, that my assistant Eric is doing spectacular work on. And then the work continues on with Steve Pankey, and I really can't say too much about that. But all I will say is I am finding out things that are blowing my mind regarding the investigation into the disappearance that we now know was a murder, but the disappearance of Janelle Matthews back in 1984. It is blowing my mind, and I will just leave it at that. I can't really say. I know you guys hate when I tease stuff like that, but trust me, eventually you're going to know all of it. I promise. I promise that. But so it's not going to like I'm going to just be lounging around. It's just going to be, when it comes to contacting people and talking to them. They deserve 100%. And I don't know. I think that I can give 100% right now once in a while, but I don't think that I'm up to giving 100% 100% of the time. So until that is, it's just not gonna get done. So who is in here? Everything. Hello, everything. Hello, Sarah. How are you? Charlie, good to see you, bud. D, what's going on with you? Lisa, how are you not first? I don't know. Everything was in here way early, over 2 hours early. Good for you. Hello, Carrie. Amy, Stephanie, Haley, happy birthday to my dad, Mary Jane. Good to see you, Mary Jane. Cherie, so great to see you tonight. How are you, Cherie? Kathy and I had a great conversation on, when was that, Kathy? It was on Friday night, right? It was on Friday night I called you to maybe talk about sleep, of all things, but it was great talking to you, Kathy. Always a pleasure. DD, Lori, no podcast. Well, we're not saying no podcast, Lori. We're gonna work something out, but things will still be uploaded on the feed. Don't worry about that. Hazel from New Zealand. Lisa, sorry you're not well yet. I was in Europe last Monday, caught some sort of plague, so I was in a similar boat. I wish I'd gotten the plague. Stephanie, I deal with insomnia at times. The best thing is to stay calm about not sleeping, accept, let it pass. Try not to think about it or worry over it. Cognitive behavioral therapy is also an option. Stephanie, you might want to look up the book. Maybe you already have, The Effortless Sleep Method. Hazel, I can really help you with sleep issues. If you want to have dealt with similar issues, research many ways to remedy these. Sure, send me some information, Hazel. Shannon McIntyre. That is amazing. Well, hello, Shannon McIntyre. How are you? Ladies and gentlemen, if you're seeing the Shannon there in the chat, Shannon was my the first, Shannon, you know how I would term you? You were the first Las Vegas friend that I made. That's true. That's true. When we started working at the Cine Vegas Film Festival together, everyone you are looking. Now, granted, I ended up having a ton of friends in Las Vegas, still do. But I would say that Shannon McIntyre is the first Las Vegas friend I made. And we made it while we were volunteering at the Cine Vegas Film Festival in the year 2000. Man, those were wild times. Or no, 1999. In 1999, 1999 is when she and I worked together. It wasn't even the 21st century yet. I wasn't even 30 years old. Oh, those were great days, Shannon. To be able to go back and just experience some of those. Oh my goodness. Shannon, good to see you, man. I really hope that you're well, Shannon. I haven't seen you in a while. Kathy, Stephanie, good advice. I also deal with insomnia. Hazel said 80% of doctor visits are symptoms as a result of stress. Yeah, Charles, sounds reasonable. Take a break. Cherie, no shame to people who need medical assistance. Sometimes you have to. Thank you, Cherie. Thank you, Haley. That's good you didn't resort to using medications. They're only a temporary solution. Yeah, they wear out. They're not consistent. Hazel, I'm recovering from chronic fatigue. Sorry to hear that, Hazel. Wow. So sometimes taking a rest is best. Hello, Paula. Yeah, it was Friday night. Thank you. Yes, Shannon. Yeah, good seeing you. Great friend. Yes, always. Shannon, we need to talk again sometime. You know, we haven't talked, had a good heart-to-heart talk in a long years and years and years. That would be fantastic for me. I want you to know that. I want you to know that. You're very special to me. Jennifer, howdy, everyone. Nice to make it while the show is still live. Usually catch it Tuesday morning. Well, hello, Jennifer and Chime. What's going on? All right, so that's enough about that. What else has gone on? The good news is my trivia team is in first place. I didn't go there last week either. And they came in third place, but my trivia team is now in front by like 100 points, and that's great. For Thanksgiving, I just sat on the couch and did a little work, watched the parades, watched the football games. It was a very peaceful kind of Thanksgiving. And my brother and his wife actually didn't even do Thanksgiving that day. They actually did it on Saturday, and then I couldn't go because I had an interview to do. The interview for this Friday's episode I did while at the exact same time they were having turkey over there. That's the way it worked out, or I think I would have gone. So other than that, not much has been going on. I've gotten back to the gym a little bit, even though I've been tired. I went and took a long walk on the beach this morning. It was chilly out. Walked that way up to Sand Key and back. Some of the things though, like because of the way it's been, I haven't been able to do my singing practice, which is fine. It'll come back when once again, I'm just trying to manage my energy regarding all of this. So that's really about it. So what do you say we get away from all the Ed stuff? And let's talk about like a lot of the stuff I wanted to cover last week. And you should know, I had every intention of doing last week's live show. I worked on it on Sunday, as I usually start work when I start working on the live show. Had no idea what would go on Monday. And I have to be honest with you. Even as it was all happening on Monday afternoon, I was thinking, how am I going to get back to my place to do the live show at 9 o'clock? And see, I think this is part of the problem. I think that I'm opening a little window, a little peephole into maybe some of the issues that have been going on. So there you go. But so we're going to go over a lot of the stories I planned to cover last week, but there was no live show. And it was all I could do. It ended up in the end to even post something saying there wouldn't be a live show. Here I am thinking about doing a live show. When it came down to it, I was barely even able to post something that there wasn't going to be a live show. Goodness. Shan, must go for now, but was thrilled to catch you tonight. Good to see you, Shan. We got to talk, Shannon. Don't leave me hanging. I'm going to send you a message on Messenger. Okay? Really love to talk. Good to see you, Shannon. So let's get into some true crime stuff. As I've already stated, on November 29th, I did this interview. It got recorded. I was sitting right here. It was just audio, though. And I was interviewed by the host of the Silver Linings podcast. His name is Jason Blair. Jason does a podcast, and he's really, I think, eventually come around to devoting a lot of it to missing persons information, true crime information. I don't know if I'd necessarily call it a true crime podcast, but something along those lines. And it was through Julia Cowley that he found out about me and decided that he wanted to interview me for the show. And so he sent me an outline, and we kind of loosely followed. We went off on a bunch of different tangents that were not even on the outline, but it was 2.5 hours. And what he said was that at least 2 hours of it are going to be public, and then maybe he's going to save another half hour for his Patreon supporters only, or something like that. So you're going to get to hear at least a large majority of it. And I came away thinking it was really good, but I have to admit I was so tired that there was probably items that we covered that I don't even remember that we covered, just to be honest with you. But it felt good. And so there's that. So be looking for that. He's not giving me any dates. And when it comes out, I will surely let all of you know. Moving on. Now, what was also funny about last Monday is that I actually started that morning talking to a lawyer. So I started the day talking to a lawyer at 9 a.m. and by the afternoon, I'm going to quick care. That's the kind of day it was. But this was the lawyer that I spoke to 5 years ago. And I talked to him just about defamation, the issue of defamation. And that was the same thing, just kind of catching up. There's nothing going on with Unfound. Nobody's trying to sue me. Nobody's coming after the podcast, although I did recently have a problem with the former guest that really ticked me off, that I'm not going to say any names or anything. But I did talk to him about that in this meeting because there was, just leave it at that. But I talked to him for an hour. And what the funny part was, now you're all of you, you're going to love this. I mean, seriously, what are the odds? This lawyer's name is Michael Warren. Young guy. I mean, compared to me, young. And of course, we're here in Florida. He's a Florida attorney. Now, when I saw him in person, it was in St. Pete. He now has his office up in Dade City, which is north of here. So we just did a video call. Or no, we were on the phone. I didn't even see him. We were just on the phone. What are the odds that he is originally from Colorado and knows DA Michael Rourke, who put Steve Pankey behind bars? What are the odds of that? You tell me, what are the odds of that? And he just doesn't know. He knows them well. They went to the same law school. Now, even though this guy is obviously younger than Michael Rourke is, they know each other and went to the same law school. And he had some other things to say that I'm not going to get into. But what are the odds of that? Now, the reason that even came up, and now I should state that when I did talk to him the first time 5 years ago, I remember something about Colorado, him being from Colorado or worked in Colorado or something like that. But, Colorado is a big state. It's not Rhode Island. And so he didn't even know about Steve Pankey. But I was telling him about some of the things that have gone on with the podcast since we spoke last, and that came up, and told him how I went out there in Weld County and all that. He goes, "Oh, I know that. I've been there. Oh, yeah, I know Michael Rourke. Yeah, I know him really well." So crazy. It was so crazy. So, because of what we did talk about, a lot of these different things, he's now made it a point to go listen to the Steve Pankey episode. I think he knew about the trial and everything. He didn't know I was a part of it. So we talked about that a little bit, but we also talked about some legal issues once again with the podcast and everything else. Wacky. I mean, what are the odds? Good guy. Michael Warren, the lawyer. And the thing is, I even ended up talking to him the first time. I was just looking for any lawyer to talk to about like defamation and everything. And I called some number or emailed someplace. And what they do here is that there's some lawyer website here in Pinellas County that if you don't know, you don't have a lawyer for something, you can go into this website and say, "I need a lawyer for this particular topic." And this database will automatically spit out like the next lawyer on the list. So every lawyer puts their name in this database, and it just kind of goes through it from one to the next, and the next, and the next, and the next. And I put in their defamation, and he was the guy that popped up. He was next on the list. That's how I ended up meeting him the first time. Such a good guy. I forgot how good of a guy he was until I spoke to him last Monday morning. At least one thing went right that day. So we talked about a variety of topics. He's going to be sending me some materials. And I look forward. He's going to look into some things for me and give his lawyerly opinion on them. And I'm guessing we're going to talk about Steve Pankey and his conviction and everything somewhere down the road as well. So what else is going on? You might have seen, let's go to this, Jody Hen Tru. You might have seen this recent article. Once again, when I say recent, it's over 2 weeks ago now, being over a week ago, like 2 weeks ago or something. You might have seen this article that's been out there. I saw it on Fox News, but foxnews.com, but it's in a variety of places, of how there is a private investigator who has been interviewed. And he says he's on the case. He says that he's narrowed who could have abducted Jody. He says it's certainly down. He has 4 names, and he is sure that one of those 4 names is the person who abducted Jody. Maybe you've seen this. I've had a chance to talk to Caroline Lowe about this. And even without she and I talking about it, just, of course, my experience of over 8 years now, I'm not convinced this private investigator knows anything. He doesn't work for Jody's family, and he's not affiliated with FindJody.com. I'm not convinced he knows anything. And so if you've seen that and you're wondering, well, what's going on there? And if you've been to FindJody.com and you don't see him there and you don't see them writing anything about it and lending support to this guy, or why I haven't talked about him in the past, or what, whatever else. And even if you go to the Console podcast, when they talked about Jody Hen Tru's disappearance, or, way earlier this year, or maybe even going back to 2023, he doesn't get mentioned. It's for this reason. I'm just not convinced that I think, what have I said? It's just a private investigator being a private investigator. I think that's what it is. They just cannot avoid the limelight. They just can't do it. So if you've seen that, I wouldn't put any stock in it. Somebody did something to Jody. Of course, I certainly do not believe that she staged her own disappearance or anything. Certainly not. But anybody can get out there and say they've narrowed it down to 4. And even maybe I can think of 4 people off the top of my head: John Van Cise, Tony Washington, and I can't remember. I can see the faces of the people. But you go to findjody.com, you'll probably find 4 different suspects mentioned there. So that this guy is saying that isn't really that special. It's really not. And on top of that, he doesn't, is he looking to this independently, or what's he doing? Like I said, no Jody's families. He's not representing them. He doesn't have anything to do with findjody.com. They've never interviewed him. I don't think he ever appeared on any of the podcasts. They did 30 some episodes. I don't think he was ever in one of the episodes. So there's that. Moving on, and I did see new information about this just today, and it has to do with Hana Kobayashi. It seems like yesterday, but it's been a while now. Remember her? She was a young woman who was flying from Hawaii to LA, and then was supposed to be flying from LA to New York City. And something happened on the changeover, switching planes, that she didn't make it to her connecting flight. And everybody was worried about her, of course. And I think they had video of her leaving the airport. She wasn't forced to leave it, of course. Nobody had her at gunpoint or anything, but it seemed she left, I guess it would be LAX, all on her own. And of course, her family went to LA and we're looking for her. Well, the news last Monday, had the show gotten done, is that not, I guess, I once again, I don't know the first thing about this guy. I don't know any more about any of this than any of you do who've seen the news. I don't know if you saw this, but her, yeah, there you go, D. During the course of trying to find his daughter, her father killed himself. Distraught about what was going on. And this just shows this is the reason we cover these disappearances. This is the reason. As I continue to say, we do not cover disappearances because they are common. They're not. What we do here at Unfound and what we cover, it's not common. These disappearances that last over a year, that go to 10 years, 20 years, 30 years, they are rare. We cover them because of the lives that they destroy. And we need to get to the bottom. We need to find answers of why this happens, why these people do. Of course, a lot of it's murder. A lot of them are murders. But how is it then that murders can hide bodies so well and the rest of us, 330 million people in the United States, can't find these people? And why are police so clueless? And that was a big topic this past Friday night with Jason Blair. This is the reason. Because I'm going to guess, although I can't specifically think of any particular guest that has ever said this to me, but I have to believe that a lot of our guests have thought about ending their lives because of the disappearances that happened in their families. And of course, we know, like, of course, the sister of Tyler Stice, Jessica Curtis, we know that, she committed suicide after she appeared on Unfound. But this is what we're talking about here. This is the topic that gets, that I've devoted my life to for the 8+ years. And I have to admit, could that have something to do with what has gone on recently? Maybe. And in fact, last Friday night, Jason did ask me about that after we were done. This is why we do this. This is why the pain that this causes everybody, this is why we do it. This is why I do it. That's why, it's been 24/7 for me for over 8 years. Now, on that note, there are 2 other pieces of information that have come out within the last couple days that continue are relevant to Hannah's disappearance. And, maybe if her father had known this, maybe he wouldn't have done what he did. First of all, the police came out a couple days ago. Was it LAPD or Sheriff's Office, whoever it is, came out and said that Hannah certainly missed that connecting flight on purpose. They came to believe that that was her plan all along, to fly from Hawaii to LA and then never continue this flight to New York City. That is what the police have decided. Now, the most recent news that I guess goes along with that is, I don't know if it was a tip or luck or whatever else, that they were able to go back to November 13th to 15th, somewhere now. So now we're talking like over 2 weeks ago, looking at a video camera where, people down in San Diego, Nogales can cross into Mexico. There, San Diego, Nogales right there. Or is it Tijuana? I'm sorry, Tijuana. Hannah was seen walking into Mexico around that time by herself. Now, it was stated, of course, early on that she was somebody, and of course, that's very dangerous. But she was seen on video walking into Mexico. Now, what's going on with her? I haven't seen anything. Nobody seems to know. The family's not saying much. Was this really the plan all along, that she'd fly to LA and then go to Mexico for some reason? Or, did something happen while she was in LA and already she had to get out of the country? I don't know. But seemingly she is no longer in the United States. I really have heard that she was not acting herself before she left there in Hawaii. So maybe this turn of events, what has gone on with this, is not totally crazy. D says, yes, I know Condeswell's ghost thought there was what do you think about her since her dad? What do you think about it since her dad killed himself? D, just horrible. And I have to believe that if he knew his daughter was still alive, even if she was walking into Mexico, that he wouldn't have done what he did. He probably thought she was dead. He probably thought she was murdered. Probably. Now, of course, she's been in Mexico for over 2 weeks. Who knows what's going on with her down there? Maybe she's not alive now. So there's that. D, yes, I know Condewell's case. Ghost thought there are really hard times. Not sure what you mean by that, D. Sheree says she's in Mexico alone. Press conference just released. Right, Sheree? Right. Also saying sometimes you have to go. But then she says she was estranged from him for a reason. And Sheree also says sometimes you have to go, no contact from your family. All right, so maybe this is a situation where Hannah is actually in the right here. Maybe she'd had enough. I don't know. I like I said, I don't know enough about it to. I don't know enough about her. I don't know enough about her family. But I will say that when she didn't, I will say that. My experience told me, being that she missed that connecting flight, told me she probably meant to do that on purpose. That was the plan all along. After that, who knows? So she's out there somewhere. I'm hoping that she's still alive. I'm hoping that she finds a way to, I don't know if she wants to come back to the United States. If she wants to stay in Mexico, I hope she stays safe down there. But she has done some damage in doing what she did. Very sad. So that's Hana Kobayashi and her disappearance from back early, mid-November. And I guess it kind of did remind all of us of that. What was the young couple and the guy took his child and they went to Mexico. Remember, the girl was at the Seattle airport and she was with her family and then she just left. And she ended up meeting up with that guy and he had his daughter, I think it was. And they went to Mexico. Kind of reminds me of that. Of course, they all eventually were found and brought back to the United States. And of course, the 2 adults are in trouble. All right, moving on. Now, a story that I was really looking forward to, and of course, I'm still looking forward to it, but it's just a week late, but it was hot off the presses last Monday, was the discovery of the Roamers. This is an older couple who went missing in 1980, April 8th, 1980, from Brunswick, Georgia. And they went missing in their Lincoln. And this is a disappearance that was over 44 years old. and it got solved within the last couple weeks. And so I want to go through that with you all right now. Sheree, no different than the kayaker. Yeah, the kayaker. Yeah, that guy. I should have put him on the agenda tonight, Sheree. That guy didn't do it. See, the thing is though, Sheree, thank you for bringing that up. I think that teaches us all a lesson. That it just shows you how hard it is to leave your life if you really want to kind of stay in the lifestyle to which you have become accustomed and successfully disappear and not get caught. It's really, really, really tough to do that. It's certainly a lot easier if you're willing to go back to basics, leave everything behind and start from scratch and have no money and everything else. If you want to do it that way, I suppose you could do that. But if, like this guy, this kayaker, obviously he wanted to leave. He had this girlfriend who knew Uzbekistan or whatever else. It's crazy. Well, he didn't want, didn't want to do any hardship. And I'm guessing that part of the reason is because I'm guessing Uzbekistan women don't come cheap. He wanted to keep all his money at his fingertips. You do it that way. Good luck. Good luck trying to hide your trail. I think we can learn something from that. So certainly we've had disappearances where people have ended up being alive, but what do they all share in common? Just totally went to living, went back to nothing, starting over. And in fact, like Trevor Nichols, seemingly he's still living on the streets of San Diego. So, and then of course we had Brandon Roberts, who was found alive, Patrick Reed, all these guys. If you're going to try to successfully do that, you got to really, really, really leave it all behind. Because this kayaker, it seemed like he thought it out, but they tracked him down to the point that they could even call him, and he's on the phone saying he's all right. Did he break any laws? Probably did. But good luck trying to get him to come back from Uzbekistan. And I wish him all the luck in the world. It's just such a crazy story. So let's talk about the roamers. So first, I'm going to read what the entry was on the Charlie Project all these years, and then we'll get into the story of how their disappearances ended. The roamers. Charles and his wife of 5 years, Catherine, disappeared together from Brunswick, New Jersey on April 8th of 1980. The couple was en route from their winter home in Miami to their house in Scarsdale, New York, driving a black custom model, fancy, 1979 Lincoln Continental with the New York license plate number CRR-CBR, so it was a personalized license plate. They checked into a Holiday Inn along I-95 and US 341 at 3:51 p.m. and took their belongings to their room 149. In fact, I'm going to guess I've been on that highway. At around 5 p.m., a Georgia Highway Patrol officer saw the couple's car south of Brunswick near some restaurants. Neither the roamers nor their car were ever seen again. Hotel management called the police on April 11th as Charles and Catherine had not checked out, and room 149 did not appear to have been occupied since they checked in. Charles kept a detailed travel diary, including notes of what he and his wife ate at every meal. The diary was found in the room, along with the couple's luggage and some potted plants Catherine was taking home to New York. There was one pair of glasses and a book lying on the nightstand next to one of the beds, and financial papers, including checkbook and income tax forms, were spread out on the desk. An extensive search of the area turned up no indication of the roamers' whereabouts, and their car could not be found either. One theory was that someone who wanted to rob the couple followed them up from Miami, then killed them and disposed of their car. but there's no actual evidence to support this. Their cases remained unsolved. So that was the information. And I think it could be that maybe Heather Grotman might have featured this disappearance on her blog. And of course, she does a podcast now, one of the two. I think she might have done that over there. Of course, we had Unfound. We did not ever get to the Romer's disappearances, but it is compelling. And like it said, extensive search. We're going to come back to that. But what do we know after over 8 years of Unfound when we hear about people going missing with their cars? Most likely, there are exceptions, but most of the time, when one is found, the other will be found. The car is found, the people will be found. If the people found, the car will be found. And so that's what I would have been thinking had we featured this disappearance on Unfound. Well, little did I know, ever could I have suspected, although it's not, in retrospect, it's not crazy. Here, Charles and his wife were close by the whole time. Glynn County, Georgia. An investigation is underway after human remains were found Friday in Glynn County, which could be linked to the 1980 cold case of a missing couple. According to the Glynn County Police Department, a Florida group located a submerged Lincoln Continental in a pond between the Royal Inn Hotel and 995 on New Jessup Highway Friday. Guess what? The Royal Inn Hotel now was that Holiday Inn back in 1980. And there was a pond between the Holiday Inn and, like it says, I-95. That is where the car with the Romers was found. It had been in that pond the whole time. That's why I did the old when I said they did an extensive search back then. I can tell you there's no doubt that had the disappearance been featured on Unfound, that's exactly what I would have done. I would have seen, I certainly would have gone and looked at that hotel and seen that pond there. And I said, I bet they're in that pond. So continuing on, the group Sunshine State Sonar Team assists law enforcement in searching through waterways for missing vehicles and people to bring closure to families still looking for missing loved ones. Investigators say the vehicle found in the pond matches the description of the car that Charles and Catherine Romer were believed to be driving when they went missing in 1980. They found a human bone inside the vehicle, and investigators are draining the pond to search for more possible remains. The remains have not yet been identified as a suspected missing couple, authorities said. Come on now. The Glynn County Police Department and the GBI, Georgia Bureau of Investigation, are investigating the disappearance of Charles and Catherine Romer. I'll read this. Charles and Catherine Romer were last heard from on Easter Sunday, April 6th, when they called one of their sons as they left Miami Beach to drive back home to Scarsdale. An article published in the New York Times by Franklin Whitehouse on October 9th, 1985 states. 2 days later, the couple got a room in the Holiday Inn, which is now the Royal Inn, where they unpacked their room and disappeared. Even though I've been out of the motel industry 30 years, yeah, I think about it. Andy Mavromat, who used to manage the Holiday Inn, told First Coast News. So they tracked down the manager of that Holiday Inn. That's spectacular. And interviewed him about this. 149, that's the number Mavromat finds himself thinking about every so often. It's a room number he'll never forget from when he started managing the Holiday Inn back in 1984, 4 years after the disappearance of the Romers. That was the buzz, he said. Somebody checks in next morning, they're gone, everything is still in the room. Yep, they never checked out. According to the New York Times report, glasses and a bottle of scotch were found in the couple's room, along with their tax returns. The Lincoln was never found. Charles Romer was a retired oil company executive from Scarsdale and left an estate valued at more than $1 million. And we have to remember that's $1 million in 1980 money. according to the New York Times. The couple's family later reported that Catherine Romer had jewelry with her that was valued between $60,000 and $80,000, which was never found. Once again, in 1980s dollars. It was speculation, Mavromat said. There were so many rumors flying around. Mavromat says he never met any of the Romers' families during his time at the Holiday Inn, but he's thinking about them now. I just hope whatever happens, however it plays out, it brings closure for the family, says Mavromat. So there you go. It's crazy, but all of us are experienced disappearance people now. We should never be surprised by this. We should not be surprised that two missing people were missing in their car in a pond on the very property where they were last seen. It's disgusting. This should have been solved back in 1980, but it shouldn't surprise us given our experience here in 2024. Now, of course, what is clear is that that pond was never checked. Sitting there the whole time, and not one person said, you know what? Maybe we should go look at that thing just in case. Just in case. Did not do it. Now, you should know, I'm under the belief that there are a lot of disappearances like this. This is not, and of course, there have been situations where this has happened before. I'm thinking, I forget what state it was, but there was a guy who was at a church and he went missing in his car. And here his car and he were found in the pond beside the church. This is going back some years now. I forget the name, I forget the location, but this probably happens more than we know. And I am inclined to believe, and we get into kind of stories like this one, that the person and the car are usually pretty close nearby. Pretty sure. It was right there. Now, we can speculate on what happened here. Did they get in the car and Charles was driving, and did he have a heart attack? And that would have made him like really push down on the gas. The car was already in drive and they go flying off into the pond. Very possible. We might be open to the idea that there have been instances where something happens and a person's trying to stop the car and the person thinks that he's hitting the brake when really he's hitting the gas and goes into the lake. I suppose we might be open to the idea where they're just sitting in the car's like in park or neutral or something, and they're looking at something, not looking at their surroundings, and they don't realize that the car has started to drift ahead and drift it before they could stop it right into the pond. Yeah. All possible. Those are all possible. Here's what I don't think. I don't think it was foul play. I don't think that anybody put that car there besides the roamers. I really don't. As a means to hide it. Why? Because I think the average criminal would think, well, I can't do that because surely the police would check there. Of course, the police don't. But it was right there. In fact, when this happened, I actually went to Google and cut that map out and posted it in the Unfound discussion group so all of you could see. It's right there on the property. People whizzing by it on the highway, parking right close to it in the parking lot for the hotel that changed ownership and changed its name since 1980. Certainly happy that it's resolved. And I'm hoping that their family you can take some solace that it wasn't foul play, that they weren't taken advantage of, that there wasn't somebody who got away with a crime, that they didn't get ripped off. I hope the family can at least take some solace in that. Yep, that's where he went, Sarah. I think that Audrey Heron's disappearance is similar to this case. You know, it's interesting you bring that up, Sarah. People have looked. Of course, a couple years ago, there was some internet sleuth who thought he saw a vehicle overturned in a creek that was on the way to where Audrey Heron lived back then. I didn't think much of it. In fact, I might have even commented on it on this live show. But it very well may be, Sarah, that, you know, regarding Audrey Heron, maybe they're just looking too far away. Maybe if she did drive off the road, maybe it's much closer to where she was working than everybody thought. I don't think that that is a crazy idea all these years later. I would have to go back and look at the map, try to work it all out again. Of course, there is a map video that I did for Audrey's disappearance if anybody wants to look at that. Of course, I've been on the record with Audrey Heron thinking I'm open to that idea, but I think the reason that she and her car haven't been found yet is because she wasn't actually going home that night. I'm open to the idea that she was actually going to her parents' house because that's where her kids were going to end up. And in driving there, something happened, whether she fell asleep at the wheel or she swerved to miss a deer or something like that. But, you know, maybe we're overlooking, you know, what might be most obvious. And, you know, it's a situation like the Roamers, in which it was so close that nobody, I guess, ever even thought about checking it. And this is where I'd like to give a shout out to Sunshine State Sonar. And they didn't take it for granted. That they didn't say, well, I'm sure that pond was checked. Why even bother? They went back to the basics. They started at the beginning. They didn't take anything for granted. I am sure that when he maybe told the police or whoever or the hotel that they were going to go onto that property and search it, everybody thought, go ahead. It's a waste of time, but go ahead. If that's what you want to do, go ahead. I'm sure they got at least a little bit of that. And they did it anyway. And I give them all the credit in the world to do that. It's not easy to show up someplace and say, yeah, that disappearance, we think probably this car is right here in this pond. And because you have to remember something. If they ended up being wrong, what would people say? You have to think of it that way. People would, you know, the current hotel manager or whoever else would be thinking, these sonar people, they don't really know what they're doing. I mean, really, come on. I mean, if the roamers were really in our car in that pond, surely somebody would have found it by now. And this Sunshine State Sonar wants to go in there and check. It's so crazy. So I'm glad that Sunshine State Sonar, I don't know anybody there. Good on them. Good work. Spectacular work. But I will say, though, once again, had we covered this disappearance for Unfound, I'm pretty sure I would take a long look at that pond. Pretty sure. Now, you should know I did go back using Google Earth. Google Earth. I did go back and try to use Google Earth going backwards to see if the water was ever low enough that somebody could have seen something. I don't think so. In contrast, there have been some disappearances where cars were eventually found, and when you did go back to the satellite photos, you could see like a rectangle or something under the water. Might also think about, of course, Esther Westenbarger. The reason her car wasn't seen because there was all that algae on top of that pond for so long. Robert Helfrey, which of course was a local disappearance in which I I really believe that he and his car went into a body of water. I didn't know which body of water it was. They did ended up finding him and his car in a body of water, kind of within a kind of a housing plan area. And that's another one where I tried to use Google Earth to see if had I been checking around, you couldn't see his car from the sky either. So, but I got to believe that right now, right there on Google Maps, right now, there are missing people in their cars at the bottom of little ponds or little lakes or rivers that we can see from the satellite pictures from Google Maps, but nobody's come across it yet. I have to believe that's true. I gotta believe that is true. So the Romer's disappearance. I knew about this. I'd known about their disappearances for a while. Never tried to reach out to their family or anything, though. So good on that. Good work. Great work. All right. Now, the only thing else I have to talk about tonight, we got 50 minutes. I don't know how long this is going to go. But I do want to talk about the Consult Podcast's coverage of Jon Benet Ramsey. I don't know. All of you should be listening to that podcast. You know that Julia, I have to admit, I don't know the other people who co-host that podcast with her. She kind of runs the show over. I think she was the one that came up with it, and she does all the major stuff, and they kind of, let's just say that, she is Bruce Springsteen and they are the E Street Band. Let's just put it something like that. But you should be listening to that podcast. They do such a good job over there. And of course they're former FBI agents and everything, but even so, I find it to be a very sensible podcast, no sensationalism, anything like that. And so it was interesting to listen to their 2-part series on the murder, of course, still unsolved murder of Jon Benet Ramsey. Now, I found it interesting. Now, I know some of you to this day are complete Jon Benet Ramsey freaks, probably, maybe even when it happened way back when, following all the news and have watched all the documentaries and have watched the made-for-TV movies and everything else. I knew about it and I've read about it. And I might have even commented on it maybe once or twice on this live show over the last 7 years, something like that. But I have to admit, I've not been a big follower of it. And maybe that's why in listening to the Consult's coverage, that there were some things that I didn't hear, and I found it to be very interesting. And I thought they did a good job really, really analyzing it and trying to come to a conclusion. Of course, the big question is, did someone in the Jon Benet Ramsey's family kill her? So her father, her mother, her brother, or did somebody really, really come in from the outside and kill Jon Benet? Now, overall, and I'm going to get into a couple specific areas here, but I have to admit, and I think they played it pretty straight. I don't think that Julia and the other hosts want the listeners to think any particular theory at all. I think that they handled over there like I do with Unfound. Whatever your theories are pretty much fine to me, as long as you're not, it's not sensationalized and you're not entering things into evidence that haven't been presented and everything. That's fine by me. But what the podcast overall really, exposed to me is that it's way more probable. I'm not saying it is the theory, but it's way more probable than I could have ever thought that somebody could have gone into that house and killed Jon Benet. And it was not, of course, it was not anybody. It was not the parents or the brother. Somebody came in from the outside, someone who does not live under that roof, and went in there, killed Jon Benet, wrote that note, and has gotten away with it for all these years. The reason I say that is a variety of reasons. First of all, the house itself was part of what they called a parade of homes. So during some time of the year, I don't know, was it for Christmas or something? I don't know. Outsiders could just come in and like walk through people's houses. I don't know what that's about. Growing up in Leechburg, Pennsylvania, that sounds crazy. But they established that many, many people had been through that house, most of them strangers, over the years. You have to remember, this is a huge mansion. What was it, 7,500 square feet or something crazy? 3-story, 7,500 square feet. So that's something that I don't think that once again, my knowledge of it going in, that I could have ever predicted that would actually be, of course, I'm very open. I was always open to the idea that, well, yeah, the Ramseys didn't do it, and it was somebody from the outside, but that it would have been, so easy for somebody to come in and do this is something that I really, really myself underestimated. That's the big thing that I took away from both episodes. Now, some other things. One of the biggest questions I have it right here, and I have a list of questions. Questions that came to my mind. Why would somebody write that long of a ransom note for a child who was already dead in the house, who was certainly going to be found anyway? And we have to remember, both the pad and the pen that were used to write that note came from the Ramsey house. This was not something that was written beforehand, and the person came into the house with it. This is something that was written on the property that night. Now, of course, what it has done is, I think that's one of the big reasons that people think that the Ramseys had something to do with it. I mean, really, who's going to sit around and write that long of a note, and even using pretty good English, going to sit around in somebody's house and do that? Especially since the whole note itself is a big lie. Why do that? It's hard. I mean, you think about it, it's hard to understand. You just killed a little girl, so then you're going to write the note. Or you could look at it the other way. The note was written first. So the person gets there, hangs out in the house, writes the note, then goes and gets Jon Benet Ramsey. That doesn't seem to make a lot of sense. It doesn't seem like the best plan in the world either. And you could say, well, the person who wrote that note didn't know that things were going to go bad. And, the person was thinking, well, I'm going to go get Jon Benet and I'm going to take her. And then this, then that. Then that note makes all the sense in the world. The problem, of course, is that Jon Benet Ramsey, the way she was killed, was not kind of like by accident. It wasn't like they were trying to get out and she fell down some stairs and hit her head and died. No, she was, we know it happened to her. She was killed on purpose. So even writing the note before the abduction of Jon Benet is done, that doesn't make much sense either. So very, very interesting. And they took a long look at the note. And once again, you want the particulars, please go listen to the 2-part episode at the consult. I do agree with one thing. Now, you should know there is a site out there that analyzes ransom notes and things like that. And I forget what the name of the site is. I don't know if these, really, this is scientific stuff or not. But I have to agree with one thing regarding the note. The misspellings in the note were on purpose. As a guy who's written a lot of words in my life and looked at a lot of other people's writing and everything, those words, I forget which words they are, were misspelled on purpose. So that's something else to remember. What's everybody saying here? Hazel, it's practically a certainty that it wasn't her family. Terrible police work. Lori, I suggest you guys go watch Web Sleuths after Ed's show tonight. Trisha will be talking about this phase. Maybe I need to do that, this case. That I might need to do that too. Stephanie, it's wild that this many years later, her case still remains unsolved. Yeah. Little girl gets murdered, is left in the house. You have this note and everything else, and it's still unsolved. It's something. I agree with you, Stephanie. So my next insight, not a question, but this is somebody who is very, very comfortable being inside the Ramsey home. In fact, the person, if we want to believe it's an outsider, was so comfortable in the home and writing the note that this person convinced millions of people that the Ramseys actually killed their own daughter. Now, that's something. Now, you can go in there, write this note, get it done, and people read the note and think the Ramseys wrote it. That is something. And I realized that they tried to do handwriting analysis, and some of the writing might have been similar to Patsy's. I want to remind all of you, handwriting analysis is not scientific. It's not. Even though we all think we have unique writing and unique handwriting, and I surely do, I don't write very well. It's not scientific. And I'm reminded of that every time I watch the movie Zodiac and how much work they put into analyzing the left hand and right hand and trying to compare it up with, some of the major suspects. It's not scientific. So even if people were saying what's similar to Patsy's writing, it doesn't mean anything. This other site that I just talked about before also was looking at the words used, and did the Ramseys, most people use the same words. It's just not something that I find to be compelling at all. So whoever did it was very comfortable being inside the Ramsey home. This goes back to, there were a lot of people who had access to the home. They had a lot of people coming in and out, landscapers and everybody else and then we had this parade, and then on parade of homes, whatever that is. And then there was like a broken window in one of the cellar windows was broken that John Ramsey never bothered to fix. I mean, you have this this 3-story house, 7,500 square feet, and you can't get a window fixed. I don't know. But I have to admit, I come away from it thinking that the Ramseys did not kill Jon Benet. Hazel says, I think the person wrote the note to intentionally throw suspicion toward the parents. It's true, but once again, you go back to, why write a long note about a child who's already dead? Remember, the note was all about, I'm going to take Jon Benet and I'll call you, and this is what I'm going to, want for money and everything else. Meanwhile, Jon Benet is downstairs in one of those rooms, dead. And on purpose dead. Tortured dead. What they think they said on the consult is that this seemed to be some sort of somebody's fantasy to do this. This was somebody was acting out some type of fantasy. So I want to move on now to a couple other things. What I also found interesting is that the Ramseys had been to of course, this was Christmas time. They had been to some sort of party earlier that evening. All of them, all four of them. And when the autopsy was done on Jon Benet, they actually found food, I think it was grapes and cherries in her stomach that were not served at the Christmas party and were not in that Ramsey house either. Now, to me, I don't even know where to go with that. Very, very odd on that one. See what everybody's saying. Lori says, I think Burke accidentally killed his sister, then the cover up by the parents. Okay. Disagree, Lori. This is a conspiracy theory and extremely hurtful. Let's not get too crazy, Hazel. If we knew, you just got to let it go. If we knew what happened, it would be solved by now. Fairy, hello. How are you doing tonight? So that was also interesting to me, that she had food in her stomach that was not served at the party, and these fruit was not in the Ramsey house either. I don't even know what to think about that. That was something I've never, like I said, I'm not an expert on it, but I heard that for the first time on the Consult podcast. Moving on. My best guess, and this is not earth-shattering, it's not earth-shattering. This had to have been somebody who obviously knew the Ramseys, and this was somebody who seemingly had something against Jon Ramsey. Because I think about it this way, because what do we think? When we hear about a child getting murdered, and a child, of course, just to say this as quick as possible, Jon Benet Ramsey was raped. We have to think that, we have to, I know where my mind goes. And that is, well, Jon Benet Ramsey was in all of these little pageants and everything. And I'm not here to get up on my soapbox for a moment, but I find those pageants and things just to be hugely, hugely weird. But I think it's a good idea. I think it's a very viable theory that whoever did this to Jon Benet knew about how she had been in those pageants. I have to believe that something along those lines, it's connected somehow. If we want to believe that a pedophile killed Jon Benet Ramsey, where I think sometimes pedophiles show up at, those pageant things. The problem, though, is what I find interesting about all of this, though, is Jon Ramsey, the father, really didn't have anything to do with Jon Benet Ramsey, his daughter, being in those pageants. Who had everything to do with it? Of course, the mother, who was actually a pageant winner herself. The problem I have is, then why is the letter addressed to Jon? If this pedophile found out about Jon Benet Ramsey from one of those pageants, developed some sort of infatuation, a fixation, a fantasy of going, finding her and doing these things, then why would addressing the letter to Jon be so important? Because if this pedophile was at these pageants, who was there? The mother was there, not the father. I mean, he might have showed up once in a while, but it's very clear that Patsy Ramsey controlled this part of Jon Benet's life. But the letter got addressed to Jon. But I should also say, originally the letter was to both Jon and Patsy, and the person started the letter over and just addressed it to Jon. And when you read the letter, like I said, very personal. I get the feeling that this is somebody who really wanted to hurt Jon Ramsey really bad. Of course, that was a good way to do it. But then we have to start thinking, well, who would know Jon Ramsey that well? But also, like I said, in my reasoning, knew about Jon Benet being in these pageants. It doesn't seem, those two things don't go to seem together. But somebody who knew Jon well, I guess what I'm trying to say here is, I know this is going to be, kind of out. I know this is I'm going to have to, yeah, there was, Lori says, well, good point about that. Never heard that. Lori didn't know that. I thought there was pineapple too, Lori, but the pineapple was established to have been eaten in the Ramsey house. It was the grapes and cherries that were different. Yes. I watched a long interview of Jon Ramsey by Ashley Flowers today. It was interesting. Okay. Amy says no intruder. So she's thinking somebody in the Ramsey family did it. Ferry, this is not a conspiracy theory, but no one seems to talk about Jon was a bigwig in his church. Could it be someone? Could be Ferry. It could be a lot of people. Could it be someone from his church? Yeah, it could be a lot of people. Could be. But where I'm going with this is, and I told this to Julia, I think the mistake people have made regarding this crime is the people have automatically jumped to the conclusion, well, being that Jon Benet was raped and she was murdered, it must have been done by a pedophile. And I'm not convinced of that. It must have been done by somebody who always has a fixation on little kids and wants to do this to them and do that to them. And if you see their computer, there's porn and everything else. I'm not convinced of that. Because when I start thinking about this crime, once again, I'm buying into the idea that it was an outside intruder. Obviously, Amy and maybe some other people in the audience tonight do not. Fine by me. But we have to think, did this intruder come in, really go up to whatever it was, the second floor, third floor? Now, it seems this person knew the house really well, so maybe that wouldn't have been too difficult. But taking that chance of not making any noise or anything, going up there, getting her, taking her downstairs, without her screaming or anything else, and doing all of that. See, I have to admit, I have a different version of events. I think that this person broke into the house and just happened to run into Jon Benet, who might have been already up, that night. I know it's a little out of left field, not a very common theory out there. And the person knew that he or she had been identified by Jon Benet, so Jon Benet had to die. And in doing so, this person did it this way to make it look like a pedophile did it when a pedophile really didn't do it. I've somehow convinced myself that that is a viable theory. Somehow. Because otherwise, really, how do you rationalize somebody goes in, kills a a child, but writes a ransom note anyway. And Amy, if you want to believe that Patsy wrote the note, it's fine by me. But Patsy knows she's writing that knowing that her daughter is dead in the basement. And that the note is a total, makes no sense whatsoever. Why would she do that? I mean, I know what you're saying. Well, she was trying to make it look like, yeah, but she would know that they're going to go down there. They're going to eventually find her dead. They're going to do an autopsy. They're going to see that the girl was raped and everything. And then they're going to look at the note and saying, what the hell is this person talking about? So there's something in here that isn't all quite adding up. And that's why I think at the consult, they kind of defaulted to the idea this was just something that a fantasy that somebody had cooked up, that the note was just part of the fantasy. It doesn't have to be part of reality. It's just something that this person decided to write because this was part of what the fantasy that this person had. This person always envisioned. He always wanted to write that note, even though he killed Jon Benet and left her in the basement and everything. Part of his fantasy was always to write this note, and that's why he did it. I don't know. Let's see. Hello, Dana. What's going on, Dana? Good to see you. I think the ransom note was a red herring written by John or Patsy to cover up what happened. It could be, but why write the note at all? Why are they writing a note knowing that their daughter's going to be found dead down in the basement? And, the investigators are, the investigators saying exactly what everybody has said since. Why is somebody writing a ransom note for a girl that's dead in the basement? I don't know. Okay, Hazel, the family has been officially vindicated by law enforcement statement. Well, until things change, Stephanie, I believe they would have to be a pedophile to physically do what they did to her. Maybe. Thank you, Boston. You are a very generous person, Boston actress. And thank you. I really appreciate it. Thank you, Boston. Thanks for tuning in tonight. You are very generous. Dana says that's the interesting thing about this case. Every time you think you have a viable suspect, there's a huge but. Yeah. So I have to admit, I'm thinking that this was a break-in to the house that was spoiled by Jon Benet herself. And that's why she got murdered. And somebody really did it up to kind of cover the tracks. Now, you should know, once again, I don't know if this is maybe really, really common news or not, but the DNA of 2 males were found. I hate even talking about this stuff. Let's just say the DNA of 2 unknown males were found on her body. 2 males who obviously are not John or her brother. John, her father, or her brother. And so did more than one person do this? Did the 2 people, two men, 2 boys break into that house that night? And that is something interesting as they were talking about the consult. At least nobody can establish, still to this day, it doesn't seem that there's ever been established how the person got into the house. And of course, that would lead back to maybe the Ramseys did it. No firm idea of how the killer got into the house, and no firm idea how the person left the house. That is something. I mean, once again, go back to maybe Amy's right here, and it's been the Ramseys the whole time. D says, you don't forget to leave your DNA on the like button. Interesting way to put that, D. Azel, the doc I watched on Netflix, it was one unknown male, D. Well, they said it was two, Hazel, so I don't know. Ferry, one thing I noticed from watching the interview room yesterday is they found her redressed after being, yeah. So somebody did this, then put the clothes back on her. Yeah. Chris is a terrible YouTuber. I'm sure Chris isn't going to like that. I'm not sure what Chris you're talking about, Lori. But according to the consult, so there were two male DNAs on Jon Benet. And then I have to admit that, going back to thinking that Patsy Ramsey could have written the note. Why would she do that? I mean, I can sit here and tell all of you that handwriting is not scientific. Comparing handwriting is not scientific. I can sit here and tell you that. But I think the average person believes it is. So why would Patsy Ramsey write that whole note thinking that it eventually could have been compared to her own handwriting? Why would she do that? Doesn't seem like a very good choice, especially considering that she didn't have to write the note. Remember, no matter what we think, the note did not have to be written. Whether the Ramseys did it, somebody else did it, whoever did it, O.J. Simpson did it, whoever did it, the note did not need to be written. In fact, writing a note like that, you would think it would cross through somebody's mind. I think in writing this note, maybe I'm making it more likely that I'm going to get caught, being that I'm spending more time here and everything else. Especially since that $118,000 comment was put in there that just happened to be close to a bonus that Jon Ramsey got at one point. Why would somebody do that? Especially somebody in the Ramsey family. Chris from the interview room. Oh, okay. Thank you, Lori. D, well, quick question, really quick. Was she alive when they did this to her? I don't know. Can't remember, D. They might have probably talked about that on the consult. Maybe somebody here in this group has been following that for a while, maybe knows that. I don't know. I'll just tell you, I don't know. Hazel says, yes, she was. She was alive. The only thing I remember them saying is that when Jon Benet was strangled, it seemed to have been done very slowly. Man, talking about this stuff sucks. I gotta tell you. I don't mind talking about disappearances, but talking about little kids and stuff like it's just the worst. It is the worst. So 27 years later, still a lot of questions. I will tell you, it seems to me, the problem we have is this. No matter if you think the Ramseys did it or whoever else did it, you'd think that it would be solved by now. You'd think that there are only so many suspects who would need to be interviewed, that the list could be narrowed down fairly quickly. But here we are 27 years later, and nobody's ever been charged with anything. It is interesting. Dana, why would a killer take the time to write the note if they know she's murdered in the house? I would think getting out quick would be in their mind. Patsy and Jon had all the time in the world before they called the police. Yeah, I don't know, Dana. I don't know why you write a ransom note for a little girl who's already dead. And you also have to remember, once again, this is something that I don't think I ever knew till listening to that She was not found right away. Remember, there was searches done of the house and she wasn't found right away because they were thinking that, they were reading the note and thinking that she really did get abducted, but they checked the house anyway. And the reason she wasn't found until later was because she was found in a room that was locked from the outside, like the outside hallway or whatever. So they're thinking, well, she's not in there. But then Jon Ramsey just decided, we can better check this too. He went in there and that's where she was. So whoever did this put her there, closed the door behind, and locked it or shut it. I don't know, maybe it's locked, but it was shut either way. So the person must have left by other means, once again, if it wasn't one of the Ramseys. And so there's that. But once again, that's not something that a killer could have ever predicted. I think your average killer, well, I'm going to put this little girl right here, and I'm going to get out of here, and I know they're eventually going to search for her, and they're going to find her in no time. No, that's not what happened. Yeah, so I don't know how to answer that, Dana. Why would I rate the note if she's murdered in the house? I don't know. I feel kind of good about it because I don't think the FBI profilers had much of insight either, except to say that it was just part of the fantasy. It wasn't a structural part of the crime. It was just part of the fantasy that this person had in his mind before it happened, or her, before it happened. Nothing really neat. That's why I say I'm always hesitant to say, this doesn't make sense. This is what I kind of mean. Writing that note doesn't make any sense unless it was just this person, this killer's idea to always write this no matter what happened. Don't know. Hazel, True Hard, which is why I don't follow them any longer. Yeah. D, yes, I can't stand. All right. Hazel, just saw the new documentary came up on Netflix as I was dog sitting. All right. Stephanie, if there were 2 male DNA profiles found on her, that really has me thinking this may have gone down differently than I assumed. Yeah. Well, I don't know. When we get into touch DNA and everything, Stephanie, it's hard to, really determine that. The fact is we're all walking around with other people's DNA on our clothes. You're standing in a line somewhere, somebody brushes up against you, take that person's DNA with you, even though that person's never been in her house. If your clothes were tested, it would look like this person was. So I just don't know. But I thought they did a really, good job with it. It just seemed to me that this was very personal. The problem, though, like I've said, what I'm saying is that there are only so many people who could have done this, yet here we are, and it's still unsolved. So something within all of that is not right. Either that or whoever did this, whether it's the Ramseys or not, are just so cold, or I don't even know what the word is. Because we have to remember, we all know this. Murders like Jon Benet's are rare. Where somebody goes into a house, murders a little kid, or if we want, murders a little kid under these circumstances, and the parents aren't, of course, the parents have been suspected. But this type of murder is so rare. It would have been much more common had shit have been actually kidnapped. That would, then we can start thinking about, okay. But for somebody to creep in, once again, I realize what I'm saying here. If the Ramseys did it, it's a little different. The Ramseys did it and wanted to make it look like a pedophile did it, somebody who creeped in from the outside. Well, if they did that, then why didn't they stage someplace in the house that the person could have come in. If this was all cover up with the note and everything, trying to make it look like somebody broke into their house, why didn't they make it look like somebody broke into their house? Lori, I didn't know about the grape thing. Yeah. Did the dad do a polygraph? I don't remember, Marcy. Don't remember. Now I realize more recently, maybe within the last 10 years, what was it? The National Enquirer, somebody went after the brother and the brother sued them and he actually won a settlement. I got to tell you, Lori says, I thought she passed very quickly. This is hard to hear. Not the way they explained it on the consult, Lori. But, I know some people, well, the brother did it, the 9-year-old brother. The way I look at it, the way that she was strangled and everything, a 9-year-old would not have been able to do that. It wasn't just the, putting piano wire around somebody's throat. The person that did this kind of used some weird turning of something to make it the whatever that was, the rope or whatever it was, get the wire, whatever, get tight little by little by little. Would a 9-year-old really know how to do that? Would the Ramseys know how to do that? Mm-mm. It seems unlikely, but not impossible. What a crime. What a crime. The brother didn't do it, Marcy says. No, Lori, Hazel, Ed, what they say about Burke is that he killed her and then the parents staged it to look like a murder. I got that, Hazel, but let's be clear about something. The way she died was strangulation, and it wasn't just your good old strangulation with 2 hands around the neck. It was very specific, a little even complex on how she was strangled. And I'm just saying a 9-year-old would not have known how to do that, would not have understood the physics of it. And she had a huge headwind too. No, Hazel. You should listen to, if you haven't listened to that 2-part podcast, you should do that, Hazel. You can get that down there in New Zealand. It's worth your time. And then you maybe, hear what I'm talking about here. So that's it, Jon Benet Ramsey. I'm convinced that somebody from the outside did it. I've convinced myself that it's someone who did it personally, somebody who didn't like Jon Ramsey. I'm not convinced that necessarily the person was a pedophile, but I could be convinced that this person wanted to make it look like that. I'm thinking that this person really wanted to hurt Jon Ramsey in particular, and that's why things were done the way they were done. I know I was explained on the duck with a paintbrush. Yeah, that's right. Paintbrush tourniquet. How's a 9-year-old going to think of that? It seems unlikely. So, all right. So Jon Benet Ramsey, if I live to be 85, I'm hoping that it will be solved so this can all get sorted out. But I think what we have to remember, the other thing is that it's a rare kind of crime. Nothing like that done in that area. It seems then to be very targeted. Just don't know. Should we be thinking about, if we want to think about people besides the Ramseys, should we be thinking about people who lost their jobs at Jon Ramsey's company, somebody who got fired, somebody got stepped over, somebody who lost a job because of his company got laid off or something like that? Should we be going in that direction? It seems like, I'll tell you, that's the direction that I would be going. If although I'm sure they've done that. I'm not saying anything that's earth-shattering here. It just seems to me that's the most viable of that path to me. Burke was supposed to be in bed, but recently Jon said Burke was out of bed per web sleuths. Yeah. Things change over time, Lori. We see that in a lot of disappearances. Stories change, and it doesn't necessarily have anything to do with anything suspicious. Maybe it is, but I wouldn't necessarily automatically think that, me. So let's move on to this Friday's disappearance. This is one that I've been wanting to feature for a long time. I've known about this disappearance for a long time. And given that this is going to be the last disappearance episode of Unfound, at least for a little while, I was really glad to get this one in. And that is the disappearance of Gregory Keith Mann Jr. from Wichita Falls, Texas. He went missing on May 10th of 1997. And his father, Greg, and his stepmother, Deborah, are the guests. They did this interview on Saturday afternoon. That's the reason that I could not go over to my brother's for the Thanksgiving dinner that they had on Saturday. I was doing this interview instead, and fine by me. Now, to me, being that this is what I do, this disappearance seems to, in my perception, is fairly well known. Maybe to many of you, it's not. But Greg, 20-year-old, he was a car salesman. He had just gotten engaged, even though he's only 20 years old. And his fiancée was about to move in with him in his apartment. He went missing the day before. The story is that he went out with a coworker of his named Chris and Chris's fiancée. They went mudding or four-wheeling or something. And Keith, even though his name was Gregory Keith Mann, he went by Keith. Keith told them that he needed to go home. They needed to take him home because he was meeting somebody at 12:15 a.m., so approximately like an hour from when he was telling them. So he didn't even tell them at the beginning of the night. He waited until later in the night to even tell them. So their story is that they dropped him off at 11:45 p.m. And he went up to his apartment, and that was that. But the next morning, the car that Keith was driving from the dealership was found parked next to his parents' house. And Keith was never seen again. Now, the important thing about that is that in the specific spot that Keith parked that car, there are only so many people who would have known that, because it wasn't in their driveway. It was actually in the driveway of the house next door that was owned by a church. There were only so many people who knew that Keith did that. But that's where the car was the next morning. So Gregory Keith Mann Jr. went missing May 10th into May 11th of 1997. This happened in Wichita Falls, Texas. There's a variety of Wichita Falls across the Midwest. In fact, I was even telling Greg's father and stepmother about this before we started the interview. I think we actually covered a disappearance from another Wichita Falls up in, was it Minnesota or South Dakota, something like that. Shanna Boydo, didn't Wichita Falls, Shanna Boydo, remember her? I think that had something to do with Wichita Falls, Minnesota, or something like that. But that is the disappearance for this Friday. Gregory Keith Mann Jr., and I was excited to finally interview Greg and Deborah. So that's all I got for you tonight. Even though the podcast, at least, is going on a bit of a hiatus, I hope to continue to do these YouTube shows as long as I have the energy to do them. So hopefully we can all get together next Monday and do this all over again. If you'll, care to tune in, and I would appreciate that. But that's all I have for you tonight. It's basically everything I wanted to talk about last week, of course, except for the disappearance last week, of course, would have been Jared McCulloch. I hope you all found that episode interesting. I surely did. Wichita Falls, Kansas was Wichita, Kansas, D. So that's all I have for you tonight. Thank you so much for tuning in. And it's been a week. I'm going to continue to say it. It's been a week. Not a fun one. But here I am. So I hope all of you have a great week yourselves and be looking for the episode to come out Friday, 2 p.m. You know how we do it here. Charlie, say hi to the kids for me. Everybody keep your heads on swivels. Do not be victims. And I'll talk to you again soon. Good night.